Good morning, dear student. Today we are going to start the first chapter of class 12th History, Bricks, Beads and Bones, the Harappan Civilization. So first we'll start with the introduction. The most distinctive artifacts of the Harappan civilization is the Harappan seal. What are artifacts? Artifacts are the remains that are found from the site. These seals were made from one kind of stone that was known as steatite, and in this the seal often contained of animal motifs and signs from a script that remain undeciphered. Decipherment means able to read or write what is written. So texts we found from Indus Valley civilization sites we do not understand what is written. Evidences like house, pots, ornaments, tools, etc., along with other immense help us to know about the people and their life. The Indus Valley civilization is also called the Harappan culture. Archaeologists use the term culture for a group of objects distinctive in style that are usually found together within a specific geographical area and period of time. In the case of the Harappan culture, these distinctive objects include seals, beads, weight, stone, plates, which you can see in figure 2.2, and even baked bricks. These objects are found from area as far apart as Afghanistan, Jammu, Balochistan. Balochistan right now it's in Pakistan and Gujarat. The civilization is dated between c. 2600 to 1900 BCE. Here C stand for circa, that means approximate, and BCE, that means before Common Era. This is the map of mature Harappan site. You can find out the locations or the places here like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Lothal, Rakhigadi, etc. Now we start with the first topic of this chapter, beginning. Here we talk about the beginning of the Harappan civilization, so that even prior to the mature Harappan culture, there existed several archaeological cultures which had distinctive pottery, then some evidences of agriculture and pastoralism was also found. Some crafts were found, some settlements were but small settlements, but no large buildings were found there. In the break, that is, we are talking about, first of all, there was early Harappan civilization and then the Harappan civilization or the mature Harappan. In the break between these two, there is a large scale burning evidences from some sites, and say that abandonment of certain towns. Now we talk about subsistence strategies. This means that how did people actually survive in those time or those period? What will be the method of subsistence or the mode of subsistence? So what strategies did they use? The first of all, we'll have to see for subsistence. What is important is what you eat or what you survive on, what you depend. So that's about the dietary practices. So they ate wide ranges of plants and animal product, including fish. Animal bones found at Harappan sites, including those of cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo and pig. The bones of wild species found suggested that Harappans hunted these animals themselves or obtained meat from other hunting communities. Bones of fish and fowls are also found. Now we talk about agricultural technologies. There are some representation on seals and terracotta sculptures which indicate that bull was known, so oxen might have been used for plowing. Terracotta model of the plow was also found in Cholistan and Banawali. You can find this area in the map. Evidences of plugged field were also found in Kalibangan, present-day Rajasthan, and they are associated with early Harappan levels. The field had two sets of furrows at right angle to each other, suggesting that two different crops were grown together. Archaeologists have also tried to identify the tools used for harvesting. Most Harappan sites were semi-arid land, therefore irrigation must have helped in agriculture. Traces of irrigation canals have been found at Shortughai in Afghanistan. Traces of rainwater harvesting found in Dholavira in Gujarat through water reservoir. Now we are going to discuss about Mohenjo-daro, a planned urban center. Most unique feature of the civilization is development of urban centers. Distinctive artifacts was the seal, and unique feature of the civilization is urban center. The first site to be discovered was Harappa. However, the most well-known site is Mohenjo-daro. That is why whenever we talk about Indus Valley of Harappan civilization, two important sites come to our mind: Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. They have their own significance. Harappa was the first to discover, and very important and very well-known site was Mohenjo-daro. That is why they say that a planned urban center was existing here. Now, settlement in these center, if you say about Mohenjo-daro, it was divided into two sections. One smaller but higher, smaller in area and higher in height, that was known as citadel, and large area but lower height, small height, it was known as the lower town. The lower town was also walled. It was physically separated from the upper town, that means citadel. Several buildings were built on platform which served as foundation. It was being calculated that if one labored moved roughly a cubic meter of early daily just to put the foundation in place, it would have required 4 million per person day. In other words, mobilizing labor on a very large scale. Considering something else, once the platform were in place, all building activities within the city was restricted to a fixed area on the platform. So it seems that the settlement was first planned and then implemented accordingly. That means it was a very planned city. Other sign of plan, including bricks, which whether sun-dried or baked, were of a standardized ratio. Now we talk about the drainage system of Mohenjo-daro. The most distinctive feature of Harappan cities was the carefully planned drainage system. When we look at the plan of the lower town, we'll notice that the road and streets were laid out along on approximate grid pattern, intersecting at right angle. It seems that streets with drains were laid out first and then house built along them. If domestic waste water had to flow into the street drain, every house needed to have at least one wall along a street. Then we talk about domestic architecture. The lower town at Mohenjo-daro provide example of residential buildings. That means people live there. Many were centered on a courtyard with rooms on all sides. The courtyard was probably the center of activity such as cooking and weaving, particularly during hot and dry weather. What is also interesting is an apparent concern for privacy. There are no windows in the wall along the ground level beside the main entrance does not give a direct view of interior or the courtyard. Even house had its own bathroom, paved with bricks with drain connected through the wall to the street drains. Now we talk about citadel. Citadel, it it include the warehouses, a massive structure of which the lower bricks portion remained while the upper portion probably of wood decayed long ago, and the great bath. The great bath was a large rectangular tank in a courtyard surrounded by a corridor on all four sides. There were two flights of steps on the north and south leading into the tank, which was made watertight by setting bricks on edges and using a mortar of gypsum. There were rooms on three sides, in one of which was a large well. Water from the tank flowed into a huge drain. The uniqueness of the structure, as well as the context in which it was found, with several distinctive, has led scholars to suggest that it was meant for some kind of special ritual baths. Now we are talking about tracking social differences, burials. Studying burials to know if any social or economic differences existed among people living within a particular culture. You are probably familiar with the massive pyramids of Egypt. At burial in Harappan site, the dead were generally laid in a pit. Sometimes there were differences in the way the burial pit was made. In some instances, the hollowed out space were lined with bricks. Some graves contained pottery and ornaments, perhaps indicating a belief that they would be used in the afterlife. That means they believe in life after death. Jewelry has been found in burials of both men and women. In fact, in the excavation at the cemetery in Harappa in the mid 1980s, an ornament consisting of three shell rings, jasper is a kind of semi-precious stone, beads, and hundred of micro beads was found near the skull of male. In some instances, the dead were buried with copper mirrors. You can see the copper mirror in figure 1.11. But on the whole, it appears that the Harappans did not believe in burying precious things with dead. Now we talk about luxuries. Looking for luxuries. The artifacts are classified as utilitarian and luxuries by the archaeologist. The first category include objects of daily use made fairly easy out of ordinary material, such as stone or clay. These include pottery, needles, flash rubbers, etc., and are usually found distributed throughout settlements. But archaeologists assume objects were luxuries if they are rare or made from costly non-local material or with complicated technologies. Thus, little pot of furnace. Furnace is a material made of ground sand or silica mixed with color and a gum and then fired, were probably considered precious because they were difficult to make. The situation became more complicated when we find what seems to be article of daily use such as spindle or made of rare materials such as furnace. If we the distribution of such artifacts, we find that rare objects made of valuable material are generally concentrated in large settlements like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and are rarely found in the smaller settlements. Now we talk about finding out about craft production. Mohenjo-daro is a tiny settlement exclusively devoted to craft production including bead making, shell cutting, metal working, seal making and weight making. The variety of material used to make beads is remarkable. Stone-like specialized drills have been found at Chahanudaro, Lothal, and more recently at Dholavira. Nageshwar and Balakot, both the settlements are near the coast. These were specialized centers for making shell objects including bangles, ladles, and inlay, which were taken to other settlements. Similarly, it is likely that finished product from Chahanudaro and Lothal were taken to the large urban centers such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, identifying center of production. In order to identify a center of craft production, archaeologists usually look for the following: raw material such as stone, nodules, whole shell, copper ores, tool, unfinished objects, reject, and waste material. Waste is one of the best indicator of craft works. For instance, if shell or stone is cut to make object, then pieces of these material will be discarded as waste at the place of production. Sometimes large waste pieces were used up to make smaller objects. These traces suggest that apart from small, specialized center, craft production was also undertaken in large cities such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. That's all for today. We'll continue this chapter in my next video. Thank you.